Good evening, everybody, and welcome into the Centier Bank Studios. I'm Chris Ramirez here with Mike Dewan, and week 4 of the high school football season is already here, Mike. We're nearing the halfway point. How fast it goes.
Unbelievable. Truly unbelievable. It seems to be kind of the same thing every week. Yeah, we meet every Thursday, have this show, but it becomes more fun and fun every week. These teams start to separate themselves, but yeah, 4 weeks in, just about crazy as it sounds. It's nuts.
This is Region Football Weekly for week number 4 of the high school season. We've got Zach Miller on the controls. We've got Zach Zanelli in the house hanging out. He's Mike Dewan. I'm Chris Ramirez. Thank you so much for joining us here. Mike, let's get right to it. What a week we had where, like you said, you're starting to figure out, who's who. You're getting into conference play now. Rivalry games are starting to happen. And you can see some teams start to separate themselves. And we'll start with the biggest one right up front. No need beating around the bush here. One of the biggest games in the state, if not the entire Midwest in high school football last Friday, going into the game on paper, was Crown Point going up the road to take on the Merrillville Pirates, their longtime conference rival. Merrillville coming in number 1 in 5A. Crown Point coming in at number 2 in 6A. It doesn't get bigger than that.
I mean, we thought it would be a much closer game, right? And you see this is a game that you look at, and it's Crown Point. They're repainting themselves as the standard of region football. They go into Merrillville, a tough place to play. As you kind of hinted at, this is a place that Merrillville hasn't lost at home in over a season. And Crown Point, they use a big second quarter, 27-0 in that second quarter, a total team effort to say the least. And Crown Point once again proving people wrong. A lot of people, including ourselves, thought this game would be a lot closer than last year's rendition, but that is not the case. Coach Craig Bouzie, again, I don't want to keep saying the same stuff every week, but how can you not with how Crown Point's performing now? Again, a nationally ranked program. They're playing like it, and they showed it to Merrillville last Friday.
Yeah, let's get to the meat of the matter, Mike, which, by the way, is brought to us by Better Beef of Indiana, and it is Better Beef, Indiana. I can attest to that. Mike, 27-0. You said it right there. 27-0 in the second quarter. The difference in the ball game, clearly, by the time they got to the locker room, game was over. How does that happen? How do you bang it out kind of even in the first quarter and then annihilate a good team like that in one quarter of play? What transpires? I'm not asking for the details per se of the game,
right?
But what is it that takes place with a team to allow something? I mean, is Crown Point just that much better that they could turn it on when they wanted?
Yeah.
Or is there more at play here?
I mean, you got to, again, as we kind of mentioned with Crown Point, you have to play a perfect 4 quarters. In Merrillville, it was a 12-7 first quarter. Again, it was Crown Point winning, but Merrillville, they put some points on the board. Their defense held their own, and they played a pretty solid first quarter, arguably a win in their book. But then you got to play 3 other quarters. You got a second quarter coming around in Crown Point. You have to play 4 perfect frames to stand a chance with these Bulldogs. And we saw that with Ben Davis last year in the state finals. We saw with a lot of those teams that Crown Point played in the playoffs, Penn, Westfield, a lot of teams that they took them to the limit and they played some more than one good quarter of football. And Merrillville, that second quarter slipped away. Crown Point, I mean, Trevor Gibbs, I think it might be the best player. He could be the best player in the area. I mean, it's crazy to say, and he's only a junior. Again, high praise from Craig Bouzier with what he said about him, but he is our peak performers. Our stat leaderboards are coming out at 7 o'clock. Spoiler alert. He is leading the area in receiving yards. He is a linebacker. He's about 6'3", 230 pounds, but plays that H-back role, tight end for Crown Point. He had 7 catches, 156 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Also had a pick that eventually resulted in a touchdown in that second quarter. Could have housed it. He was, I think, ran out about the 2-yard line, but he's a player that he's just been fantastic. Took a big step up in his junior season, and he, again, like I'm saying, he might be one of the better players in the area. But just you have to play a good 4 quarters. And Crown Point, again, when those players kind of start rotating in, you still have a lot of energy on that Crown Point sideline, and they're just so poised. They got a great coaching staff. They can go into just about any environment, and no matter what the stakes are, they'll find a way to come out with the win. So a big second quarter led to that. Just depth, complementary football. Again, Noah Ehrlich had a fantastic game, 4 total touchdowns. They're the total package. Again, you just have to play a perfect brand of football to stand a chance.
This is Region Football Weekly. We are live from the Centier Bank Studios. I'm Chris Ramirez with Mike Dewan. Going through the games from week number 3, that was Crown Point, the meat of the matter, that second quarter, no question about it. Thank you to Better Beef of Indiana for sponsoring this season. Let's stay in the Duneland. Lake Central at Portage. We knew this was going to be a good game, and even we figured it'd be a close game. It ended up being one, 23-21 final. Lake Central gets the win. Tell us about it, Mike.
This is a historically it's a historic rivalry for these last few seasons of how close these games have been, but they always seem to result in Lake Central's favor. The last 4 regular season games between these two squads have now been decided by single digits. Now, as I mentioned, they played each other in the playoffs last year. I'm looking at regular season only in this very week, and LC just finds a way to get those proper bounces. Pete Koulianos, again, he has his guys kind of right playing some close games and has these guys, they're learning how to win in the close battles. And Portage, some of the meat of the matter, I'd say a couple turnovers on their end, that kind of things went the wrong way. And in a game where it's a 2-point game, I mean, they had the lead at one point, but a bounce goes one way, a flag, or whatever that may be. You have to make more plays, and Lake Central, it seems to be something they tend to do against this Portage Indian team, and another game kind of slip away from Portage. I mean, Jacob Turley's a guy to look out for. Sophomore running back for Lake Central, stepped up big time, had his best game, arguably, of his high school preps career for the Lake Central Indians, 139 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. And Lake Central's defense, very, very solid over there, only giving up 38 points so far this season. A Portage team that was putting up points pretty well. Again, it's still a younger team, but Lake Central, just a couple more bounces go their way in a rivalry that's been decided by single digits for the past few seasons.
Yeah, 23-21 the final, Lake Central getting the victory. Both of these teams, Mike, I think at 2-1 so far in the season, and the way they played, pleasant surprises for anybody who's following Duneland Conference action.
I'd say so. We're going to talk about our top 10 a little bit later. 2 teams, they're going to round out that top 10 list, but definitely a pleasant surprise. Portage, again, a team that went winless last year. Got to give plenty of kudos to what they're doing so far. They could very well be 3-0, and that's a big if, to say the least. But nonetheless, they're in a good spot right now, and they're going to have their hands full maybe next week. So that's going to be a fun one to talk about. Then for Lake Central, obviously, we mentioned that Michigan game last week against Grand Rapids Central Catholic, or 2 weeks ago, I should say. They went up there and competed. That's not an easy team to play, especially going on the road and going into Portage. Going back on a bus to play a Portage team that's pretty solid. To do that, scrap out a game by 2, got to give a lot of kudos to Lake Central and what Pete Koulianos is doing over there.
Moving over to the NCC, the Andrean 59ers went down to the farm to take on the Cougars with a K in that one. But what did you call that game last week, Mike? How did we describe
I called
that?
What did I call it? The Catholics versus the Cowboys?
The Catholics versus the
Cougars.
Cowboys. I like that.
Cougars.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's a good one. That's a good one, and nobody can get mad about that one.
It could stick. True.
Absolutely. And okay, so the Catholics and the Cowboys down there on the farm, 28-7.
Yeah.
Andrean able to pull away and win by a large margin.
Yeah, from what I heard, this was a game that a lot of teams both these teams are quite familiar with each other. A highly anticipated game between the two squads, but Andrean, they did their business down there at Kankakee Valley. This was a team, again, they haven't lost to and still haven't lost to since 2012. This is a game with a lot of high NCC. It's big for the standings. Again, we're looking for a team that could compete with Hanover Central, and these two could be in the mix. But Andrean, they showed us a lot. Brady Ellis, the quarterback for Andrean, arguably played his best game of the season, 10 of 20 with the passing, 154 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. Jimmy Finley had 3 catches for 103 yards and a touchdown. And Marco Castro, who's that big-time running back for Kankakee Valley, Andrean defense, they're only getting better week by week, held them to 3.2 yards per carry on only 29 carries. Had about 90 yards, which might be a below-average game for Marco Castro's standards, but Andrean showed us a lot last week to, again, after a tough start to their season, to get a big-time victory in the NCC and to go to KV and do their business. So shout out to Andrean. But, yeah, it was a big game there, to say the least. And does Marco Castro still lead the region in rushing? You can find out when, Mike, with our peak performers, courtesy of Powering Indiana. 7 o'clock coming out. I know you guys love that stuff. We got tackles this week, too, total tackles. First time we're doing that this week. Total tackles, that'll be in our peak performers. Coming out here about 7 o'clock, just after the show. Yep, and again, that's sponsored by Powering Indiana. So, all right, Mike, we got a couple more games we want to look through. Before that, there's a couple of things that we want to mention. Sure. One, we are coming out, our series Beating the Brickies. Yeah. We have the introduction out. That's on our website at regionsports.com. We'll be releasing Saturday. We'll be releasing the first in the series of that, which is the Lake Central Indians. It's called Giant Killers. LC Stops the Streak. That'll be followed up by 7 others. We're going to have a total of 8 altogether. Mike, tell them how people can find it. Yeah, it's going to be on our website mostly. We're going to, of course, when the articles come out, they're going to be posted on our Instagram and Facebook, and we'll kind of have little snippets of each, but you could find it at our website at regionsports.com. You could also find that intro, which is up there now, the Beating the Brickies intro, wrote by yours truly. That was it's been a fun series so far. Yeah, Lake Central, I got a snippet of that story so far, what I saw from what you did. And it's it's just so fun. It's been such a fun series so far, and again, a lot of teams to highlight, but very few. It's not many could live to tell the story, and we're just happy that they're still around and willing and able to share their story about how they beat the Brickies.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And just so you know, what this is we went back to the era, the 20-year domination of Hobart, which it's really a 19-year run when you consider their sectional championship era. But in '78 they were 9-1 and they won the Duneland. They just didn't get awarded a playoff spot, which they very well could have. So we're looking at that 20-year window and a few teams that were able to stop streaks. Hobart had some amazing streaks: a 57-game regular season winning streak, a 55-game Duneland winning streak, a 71-game home winning streak at Bricky Bowl. Beating them in a regional, some teams that were able to beat them in the regionals, and it was like at the time for those schools the biggest win in their history. Beating the Brickies was a big deal, and that's kind of why we're revisiting it, and we hope you'll check it out on the web. Again, it's called Beating the Brickies. The introduction is up there, and then that's already there, and then as of Saturday we'll have the second. And then I think you're working on the Merrillville, the next piece, right? We've got a couple more coming up that you're taking care of.
We got the Merrillville Pirates from 1986. That might be the first time we announced it officially, what our second team will be. I'm currently in the process, though. We are talking about the same team from that 1986 season, but the Merrillville Pirates from that fateful season. So it's been good to talk with those guys. They could recall it pretty well. Again, some guys are better than others, but it's nonetheless always fun to take a trip down memory lane. And like you mentioned, that's kind of that Hobart game. It was kind of everybody's Super Bowl back then, and they fully explained that as well. They grew up, again, a lot of region guys that they know about what the Bricky lore was like and how important that was to even just stand on the field with them, let alone compete and potentially even beat them. So it's been a fun ride so far, and we're excited to show you guys.
It's a two-way kind of a thing. I mean, for the Brickies, some of you guys don't get your feathers ruffled that we're talking about games you lost. It's just as much a testament and tribute to the Hobart Bricky program as it is paying homage to those who were able to beat them. It's kind of a two-way thing because that's how big it was. I mean, that's like you said. I mean, the stories that we're hearing from these guys about what it was like the week that they played the Brickies, what it was like the day of the game.
Right.
Those are just stories that you don't get with other games most of the time.
No, I mean they recall those. They recall that whole. I mean the whole day, the whole week. Those guys that played Hobart, and it's
fans showing up at 7:00 in the morning on school campus.
Right. That's usually one of the questions I ask these guys: is how early did the Bricky fans get there on the Friday morning? Because it's usually as early as 7, 8 a.m. I mean, it's truly unreal. And again, it's a big testament. Although we're going to highlight maybe the teams that defeated those Bricky teams, nonetheless, none of this story can be told without the dominance that the Hobart Brickies did back in the day. And it's created such a culture over there with Hobart. And again, the story of Indiana football, let alone Northwest Indiana football, cannot be told, obviously, without Hobart during that time. So
very well said. Yep. So I look forward to writing some more. Brian Waddle's helping us as well. Local sports writer. Brian's doing, I think, 3 of them. So there are more to come, and please do us a favor and check it out on our website. Give us a couple of clicks, give it a read, and let us know what you think about it.
Let's do it, yep.
So, all right, Mike, back to a couple of review situations from last week. Let's take a look at the GSSC. Westside and Boone Grove, a low-scoring, kind of old-school score here, 8-6.
Absolute rock fight over there between those two GSSC teams. A slugfest, to say the least. This was a team that Westside lost to 52-12 last year. Now, granted, Boone Grove, looking at their previous few games, they are without their quarterback, Mark Rowland, but nonetheless, this should not take away from what Westside's doing over there. It was their first 2-0 start since 2004. Now they are 3-0. Again, the first time since that year. They started out 5-0. I believe Eugene Johnson,
Coach
I believe,
Johnson,
was the coach.
absolutely.
We were looking that up over here after seeing that great article written on them, and one of those players of Westside who's been fantastic so far is Giuseppe Moore, their dual threat quarterback. They did not complete a pass in that game against Boone Grove, but they did all their damage on the ground. Giuseppe Moore was the main benefactor of that 223 rushing yards, a 6.6 yards per carry average, and had that lone touchdown for Westside, a team that is going to compete in the GSSC. You and I talked before we got on the air, but this is a conference that is very competitive as of late. We were kind of seeing who's going to win each side of each division. It's going to be tough to tell. And Westside, they're deserving of their flowers, obviously making history so far with this team. And Giuseppe Moore, they have an absolute dynamic playmaker there in the backfield.
And one more to look at, Griffith And Hammond High, I believe Hammond Central, excuse me, I believe they led in this game, but Griffith came back. Central, the first team to score on Griffith this year.
That's true. I want to say, I think I remember correctly, the scoring, points for and points against for Griffith is now 133-14, so still doing pretty well for Griffith, and obviously now it's their first 3-0 start since 2006. Granted, Hammond Central might have been the best team they've played all year. Again, they scored first, and they still got a solid squad over there. None to take away from that, but Griffith, they're making a little bit of history over there. Again, maybe it's a different conference nonetheless. It's a different time, but they haven't done this since the Russ Radke era, and it's truly special what they got going over there. Again, they got the coach for the job, of course, Phil Mason, who's doing a great job I'm seeing over there, and they got a lot of guys. Again, Ryan Bouillon, sophomore quarterback, he, again, spoiler alert for those peak performers, we got their stats. He's now leading the area in passing yards, only a sophomore. You don't see that much. When you think of Griffith football, you kind of think of, again, what was it, what was the offense they ran?
They ran the wishbone.
The wishbone, right?
Yep,
the boneyard, right?
Offense.
Of course.
Yep,
of course.
the option, yep.
And now you look at this, they're throwing the ball over the field. It's very interesting. You see what they're doing over there. It's kind of a more aerial attack instead of the wishbone like we're so accustomed to. Obviously, of course, they named that place the boneyard, but not so much anymore. But what they're doing over there, it's truly impressive. Again, Griffith football, again, when they're playing well, they're beating pretty solid teams. There's a lot to be excited for just the state of the program. And again, Northwest Indiana football is doing quite well.
Yeah, and Griffith is one of the towns in Northwest Indiana that when their football program is winning, you feel it. You know,
100%.
you feel it driving through town. You feel it talking to people. You start seeing social media posts from guys that, are popping out of the woodwork. Football means everything in the town of Griffith, and that football team is kind of the center of the community. It's been sort of on lockdown for a while as they haven't been very good. But, look at them now. I mean, they're 3-0. Phil Mason, people are looking at them like the second coming, and that's what they want in Griffith. They want to be this good at football.
Right.
And if they are, everybody's going to know it. And we'll see what remains. But the one thing I've been asked is, well, they don't play anybody. But I've gone back and looked at some of the other Griffith schedules in the past. 97, they didn't play anybody. They played Hobart in week 1 or 2, and they got beat. Mm-hmm. But the rest of the schedule wasn't that tough. It was, a lot of teams with losing records. I think they were in the LAC Blue at the time, which is kind of like where they are now in the GSSC. It's a similar sort of competitive level.
Yeah.
So I think Griffith is maybe the most interesting story. We've got them coming up in the top 10.
Yeah.
I mentioned to you, we'll talk about where they are, but I think that's the highest they've been, since Russ Radke. And, people are, the name Russ Radke, we brought him up 2 or 3 times already, and that's the name. If people are talking about that the way they are and connecting now to then, that's generally a good thing. In the past, it's, all of that sort of time period was sort of put in a case and forgotten about, and now talk of that is starting to come up again. And there are a few communities like the town of Griffith where football means as much as it does.
Right, and you touched on the schedule, the early parts of the schedule, and those first 2 teams they kind of ran through, but their schedule's only going to get more tough. I'd like to say the GSSC, just on that side of the division, I want to say the top heavy, the kind of favorites on that side. I believe West Side is in their side of the division, as well as Wheeler, 2 teams that I believe they're going to play at a later date, as well as River Forest as well. I don't know if they're on their side, but they're the GSSC, again, they got a lot of talented teams that they're going to give you a fight every single Friday night. Hammond Central did just that, and this game kind of showed us that, okay, Griffith did their damage in the first 2 weeks, shutout victories, running clocks by the second half. But this was a game they showed us they could win close. They could actually come from behind and put up, again, 28 unanswered points, I believe, and then obviously beat a very solid Hammond Central team. So kudos to what they're doing over there.
And you look at Griffith, one last thing, about 600 and some students. The teams they played, Highland, about 900 students. Munster, about 1,500. Hammond Central, about 1,500. So that's impressive that they're able to do it against such larger schools, because probably about the same number of kids in uniform. Griffith is just, again, off to a great start. Congratulations to that ball club over there. So, all right, Mike, that takes us through the reviews for last week. We're going to take a timeout. When we come back, we'll look at the Enigberg. How did I say that? Did I get that wrong?
Enigberg.
You got it right. It's the Enigberg Top 10. And we will be back with that and more coming up on Region Football Weekly from the Centier Bank Studios, live on the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.
When life takes you places and you can't get to the store, shop online with Strack and Van Til to go. Our to-go service is easy to use, and it can save you time and money. Once your order is in, our own Strack and Van Til team preps your order with care. For delivery or pickup, enjoy the convenience of letting our to-go team shop for you. Enjoy your special moments. Sign up online today at shop.strackandvantil.com.
Hi, I'm Crowd Company's Lantern Man. For years, I've helped your family and friends save on their car insurance. And now I've returned to rescue you from high prices. Whether you have a perfect driving record or a not-so-perfect record. Follow me to the Crowd Agency for immediate and affordable coverage. I'm your insurance superhero. Crowd Company's Insurance Professionals. Highland, Merrillville, and Michigan City.
Thinking about what to do after high school? Consider a career with Boilermakers Local 374. As a Boilermaker apprentice, you'll earn while you learn. We offer excellent wages and benefits, and as part of our no-cost hands-on apprenticeship program, you'll learn from the best in state-of-the-art training centers and on the job. Become a union Boilermaker and get on your way to a great career. Find out more, visit www.local374.org or call 219-845-1000.
Can't wait for summer, but dreading the heat because your old AC let you down? Don't sweat it out this summer. Call Economy Electric Heating and Cooling. The professionals there can fix you up. Install a central air unit that'll last for years. Your family deserves to stay comfortable. And with a 24/7 emergency service, comfort is just a phone call away. Give them a call at 219-923-4441 or check them out on the web at 4ajobdoneright.com.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Centier Bank Studios with Mike Dewan. I am Chris Ramirez. This is Region Football Weekly, heading into the fourth Friday of the 2024 campaign, Mike, and good games on the docket. We're going to take a look at some of them later. Right now, though, we want to take a look at our Enigberg.
There you go.
Do it again. Say it again for me.
Enigberg?
He does it better than I do. It's not easy, but that's how you do it. And what do, Mike? They are home improvement experts, okay? So find them on the web at eberg.com, and you can see all the cool different things that they can do from the exterior on. And speaking of the exterior, Mike, as Enigberg is our top 10 sponsor here, let's take a look at those on the outside looking in who did not make it into the Enigberg top 10 this week.
I'd like to say our first team out who had a big win last week is the Michigan City Wolves, a team that was in our top 5 at one point after a first 2 tough games in the non-conference schedule for Michigan City. They got a big win against Chesterton, shut out a team that was able to run over just about the first 2 opponents they saw throughout their season, and City proved us a lot. A defense that obviously has some star power. A name like Adrian Holly's a guy to look out for, but an offense that's relatively young. But Trinniston Hart's their quarterback over there. He's only a junior. He's only going to be getting better, and he had a fantastic day, I want to say, against Chesterton not too long ago, as well as they got some young receivers on the outside that are forces to be reckoned with. So they're kind of our first team out. Kankakee Valley, we mentioned earlier, who suffered a tough loss against Andrean. They got a big game coming up against another bubble team who we'll talk about in a little bit. But we know they could run the football, and we know they got a good coach on their sidelines nonetheless. River Forest, another team that suffered a tough loss last week. We did on the Region Sports Network. That was a good game against Wheeler, but a second half that just got away from them. The Bearcats just used complimentary football, and River Forest looking to bounce back again this week. I believe they play West Side, so that's going to be a fun game to monitor, a bubble team versus the top 10 team, spoiler alert, but that's going to be a fun one nonetheless. And then Chesterton, that was a team, again, we talked about City, a team that was able to run the football the first 2 weeks, but I don't know if they really did anything in the passing game against Michigan City. Michigan City obviously did what they could, put up a couple points, and Chesterton could not respond. With a Duneland schedule coming up, of course, there's a lot of bounce-back games, and Chesterton's going to look to do that this week. And then Hobart re-enters itself back into our bubble. Getting Willie Shearer back is a big plus. He made his senior season debut against Munster. finally put some points up on the board. Hobart did. They only had 9 points in their first 2 games. Put up 38 against Munster, a team that they're going to have a good schedule coming up against some quality opponents who they could probably stand more of a chance with than those 2 first non-conference opponents that they had coming up. And they got a big game coming up against another bubble team tomorrow. A team that we're going to look out for. Again, they're only going to get better, especially with Eric Schreiber Jr. again getting more familiarized in his first season as head coach. A younger quarterback as well over there as well with Alex Tatum, who I believe is only a sophomore. They got some young guns over there as well as some veterans. But Hobart, we're going to hope, hey, this could be that was a big-time win. Again, a Munster team that's rebuilding, but something to get the confidence back up for Eric Schreiber and his guys.
Yep. Okay, Mike. Well, that's it. Those are the teams on the exterior of the Enigberg Top 10, Enigberg Exteriors. Find them on the web at eberg.com. So let's get to it, Mike. There are 10 teams we have to mention here, and there's been a little bit of movement.
Of course.
So there always is, and let's start. We'll go right to number 10, the Portage Indians.
Portage, tough loss last week. We figured, again, as I mentioned, with the Duneland schedule, and they're going to have a potential bounce-back game this week against a very solid team within their conference who we'll talk about a little bit later. I think a key for that game going to be hold on to the football, try and do whatever you can to win these games close, because they're going to be close from here on out if they're not blowouts. I mean, this is going to be some tough Duneland opponents, and this is not an easy schedule for Portage after this Lake Central game. So they got to buckle up and get ready to go, hopefully hold on to the football. But again, Roy Richards on your sideline, anything's always possible.
Yep. I think Portage, one of the biggest surprises of the year. They're at number 10 now. They slip a little. But my biggest surprise of the year may be the number 9 team, and that's the Lake Central Indians. And the reason they're a bigger surprise, well, A, they beat Portage.
Yeah.
And I knew that Roy Richards was going to get that program turned around in year 2. Pete Koulianos got a big job on his hands coming in, taking over, starting off. But you know what? He's got a 2-1 record just like Roy Richards does. He's got his team in the top 10. So for me, that is the biggest surprise of the year so far.
Yeah, got to give credit to Lake Central. Obviously, give them the edge over Portage after being victorious against them last week. But we've seen a lot of solid starts to the regular season for Lake Central. Where do they go from here? Obviously, they're going to have a tough matchup coming up tomorrow, but looking beyond that, it's can they sustain themselves to be a name on this list? Yeah, it's going to be tough maybe after tomorrow's end, but Lake Central, obviously Pete Koulianos, you mentioned, that's quite a surprise, and yeah, it's a big job to be the head football coach of Lake Central, coaching a 6A school, but what he's done over there so well is build up the culture, bringing the past with the present. One of his big stresses of the offseason was building up the community and doing whatever he can for his alma mater to bring back Lake Central football to the forefront. So, again, they showed us a lot of competition through these first 3 weeks, and who knows what could happen tomorrow. All they've done so far is compete, and that's kind of the coach Pete Koulianos is. So, got to give the flowers, of course, for Lake Central for their first time on this list this season.
All right, Mike, looking at our list, continuing on at number 8, Wheeler Bearcats, 1-2 record, but respectable showing so far through 3 games.
Yeah, this is kind of when they turn it up in the season. We saw it last year. They started off to an 0-3 start. They dropped that game to River Forest last year, but after a scoreless first half against River last week, who knows what could have happened, but Wheeler, they played complimentary football, leading to their first win. Caleb Klimzak impressed me a lot. I was fortunate enough to be at that game and to call that game, and he's a pretty big quarterback. He's about 6'6", but he can move in the pocket as well as he's got a pretty good arm. They got some good receivers over there as well. A lot of guys playing both ways. Wheeler, I'm liking what I'm seeing for them for the rest of the year. This is definitely when they turn it up again. They won 6 straight games to finish out their regular season last year. Who says they can't do it again?
Yeah, the GSSC well represented with Wheeler at number 8. At number 7 is Westside.
Big win for Westside again against Boone Grove. Again, a team that they lost by 40 points last year. Granted, they may not have had their quarterback, but I think Westside deserves their flowers. They're making history so far. Their best start in 20 years. Giuseppe Moore is a real threat in the backfield. And again, Westside, they're always going to be a competitive team. They're looking to do a little bit more damage when the postseason comes around, but they're going to hopefully ride that momentum. They got a big game coming up this week, hoping to prove some more people wrong, get off to a 4-0 start, which, again, hasn't happened in 20 years. A lot of kudos to give out to Westside, but, again, a good start so far, a big win against Westside and against Boone Grove, and we know they could run the football just about better than anybody they can up here in the region.
Staying in the GSSC, it's not often that we see 3 teams back-to-back-to-back from that conference in the top 10. But 6, 7, and 8 all belong to the GSSC, with 6 being the Griffith Panthers.
Griffith, a newfound passing attack we mentioned. I almost forgot about the wishbone, and thankfully you reminded me of it. But that was, again, a run-heavy offense, a lot of deception typically. But now what we see from Griffith, the leading passer here in the area who's only a sophomore. They got some young wide receivers as well, and just a lot of guys, again, playing well beyond their years. A team that had a lot of experience, a lot of younger guys last year, but now they gained that year of experience. Another year under their belt, especially under the Phil Mason kind of culture he's got going on over there. They've done nothing but dominate teams so far, and obviously they've showed us how to win close as well against Hammond Central. The schedule might get a little bit tougher, but they're going to have to try and prove us here against these GSSC teams. But again, they're definitely going to be a threat in that mix of those GSSC teams we just mentioned.
All right, let's move to the top 5, Mike. At 5, back in the day, they were the number 6 team's biggest rival. I'm talking about the Andrean 59ers.
Yeah, they were a team that was at 10 last week. Again, they were 0-2 going into that KV game, but obviously no one has just about a tougher schedule than Andrean, at least non-conference, starting of the season. With Merrillville and playing Valparaiso, we still saw a lot of potential in this team, and especially going to a Kankakee Valley team who they historically did pretty well against, and they did just that, a KV team that's still very, very solid, a bubble team of ours, but their defense, again, is only getting better. They're starting to be able to run the football. That was kind of one of the big things with Andrean. We know they could throw the football. They've had some solid quarterbacks, some solid receivers, but one of the big concerns with them is being able to run the football and kind of play some balanced offense. I believe Brady Stovall, is only a sophomore. He's kind of their lead back right now. I think he had about 60 yards last week, doing pretty well, being kind of a running back that Andrean hasn't seen since the likes of Drake Bowen. So they're doing a good job over there. And again, the NCC right around the corner. Who knows how this will finish up? This is again, Hanover might be the favorite, as we seem to always mention, but who's going to be the guys that maybe take them off that throne? It could be very well, could be the Andrean 59ers.
Let's move to the top 4. It's the same 4 it has been all year, just maybe somewhat in a slightly different shakeup here, Mike. Number 4 right now, we've got Valpo.
We keep Valpo at 4 because, they're showing us a lot. They're showing us a great game last week against LaPorte, and they've played a great game and a half of football, again, that second half against Andrean. That was a big time win. An 0-2 start for Valpo would have been quite of a head scratcher, but they showed us a lot. Offense is only getting better. Same with the defense. That is, again, relatively young Valpo offense, though. I think they've scored, I want to say, at least 28 plus in every single game so far, and they've done it by running the football. Thomas Berta, but we give the edge a little bit to our number 3 team, a team that they're probably going to see, of course, in the conference later in the season, but also, again, another classmate in Merrillville. Yeah,
that's going to be possibly 2 showdowns between Merrillville and Valpo this year. The first one will come in the regular season. If we get lucky, one will come in the postseason. But Merrillville coming in at number 3. Talk about the Pirates. They had a rough week last week.
Yeah, it seems to always be the case, though, with those 2 teams. They'll find a way to meet each other, of course, obviously in the conference schedule, but probably in the regional as well. Knock on wood. We'd love to see that rematch once again. But the reason we kept Merrillville here, again, I like what they did kind of in the first. They'd shown they could run the football. Their defense is relatively stout. It's just an absolute buzzsaw when you got to play Crown Point. It was a little concerning that that the game transpired that way at Merrillville. This was a place that they seem almost unbeatable at some times, but Merrillville, again, I like their track record. They always find a way, like Valparaiso, to be consistent, be competitive in year's end. We're just going to have to wait and see when these 2 teams kind of line up against each other, but I got to give the slight edge to Merrillville, a good rushing attack, and just a defense that's a little bit more experienced, got their playmakers on the outside as well. They just got to figure out their quarterback position. I know that's kind of a big question mark right now, and kind of the old saying goes, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you really have none, and they're kind of rotating 2 guys right now, to my knowledge. They're hoping to kind of put the stamp down on that and figure that out going forward.
All right, now there are 2 remaining teams left, and who might they be? The usual suspects. In the number 2 slot, it's the Hanover Central Wildcats.
This is when they just start playing their best brand of football. A big win against Highland last week, looking to now travel to Lowell, to my knowledge, tomorrow, I should say, and keep their collision course going, hoping to repeat, of course, as NCC champs. They're just as solid as they come. These next 2 teams, there's only so much you could say, but they keep doing damage every single week. They're consistent. They find ways to win the football game, whether that's close, whether that's by a blowout like Hanover did last week. And Caden Verrett's always a nice guy to have in your backfield, as well as they got a transfer quarterback, Tommy Bonner, coming back home to Hanover Central, has leading them to a pretty solid start so far. Again, very well could be a 3-0 team if they didn't go down to play Chittard, which again is something they very well could not have said as little as 5 years ago, but that's where the standard of Hanover football is at this very moment.
Before we get to number one, Mike, we need to acknowledge the end of an era. Tomorrow night, Friday night, 7 o'clock, they'll be playing football at the Inferno, but they won't be playing it on grass.
Yeah.
They'll be playing it on turf. This is, I think, hard for a lot of old-time region football fans like me to accept.
Yeah.
It was hard enough when the Boneyard went to turf, but there was something special about that knee-high grass in September down in Lowell.
It's definitely one of my favorite places to play. Again, they obviously switching to turf again as of tomorrow, but I'm more of a turf guy, I'd say. But in terms of grass fields, I loved Lowell's, and it's a scary place to play. It adds another layer of the Inferno, which is still always going to be a fun place to play. Maybe not on the away side, but there's going to be that flame that goes up every Lowell touchdown. The cowbells ringing throughout the night, and it's just pitch black out there. But yeah, it's tough, especially for maybe the older folk that all they've seen is grass, especially at that field. One of the remaining fields with grass until obviously tomorrow. But yeah, an end of an era to say the least.
I always felt that was a home field advantage for the Lowell Red Devils.
Yeah,
Do they not feel that way? Is that the reason? I mean, I know financially you'll get, it makes sense to do it or whatever the case is. But from a football perspective, not from a budget perspective, does this help the Lowell football team? Does it change their identity at all?
Yeah, one could only tell. I mean, we'll see how tomorrow night goes. Obviously, a big matchup between you got a tough team coming to town in Hanover Central, but who knows? It might be different for the players. I mean, again, you grow up probably playing Pee-wee football. Again, if you were to play at the high school, you're playing on grass. And
that is a certain style of football, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you play on grass, you're going to have a slightly different style at the very least than somebody who's always playing on a smoother surface.
You got to wear different cleats, some people do. Some people switch
We've
cleats.
seen teams change their game plans that had turf.
Yeah, some people
now
just
we
run
can
differently.
We can start throwing the ball more. We can get into shootouts. Lowell is 3.5 yards and a big cloud of mud popping up.
Yeah,
that's Lowell football.
It'll be interesting, but it's definitely.
So yeah, I just found out. I had no idea. I found out before the show. So I'm really taken aback by that. Good luck. I hope it all works out.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but I mean, as a fan of what they do down in the Inferno and the good old days and all that kind of stuff, I miss grass at most places. For me, as a member of the media, as a broadcaster, somebody working from the press box, what the great thing about turf is the yard markers. You can see where everything has.
Sure.
In the old days, the fields were not marked like that. You didn't know where they were sometimes. You had to figure it out.
Especially
if it rained, and later in the year when things were, kind of wiped out from, all the playing on it and stuff. So, I think that's going to be it's a big shift for anybody that follows, region football, and I'm really curious to see how that changes the dynamic. I mean, let me ask you this, and then we'll get to our number one team. So when I've had coaches tell me when they had to go to Lowell, they found a place with grass to practice on that week because it's different. So how does it, you know what I mean? Does this change, will teams now change how they prepare? Can they now prepare the usual way now that they don't have to do anything different?
I'd say why not? And again, I kind of go back to my other point, but it's going to be interesting to see how those Lowell players kind of accustomed to it. Because again, you're probably growing up, if you're playing Pop Warner or Pee Wee football and you're lucky enough to play at the high school for Lowell, you're playing on grass. That's all you're accustomed to. And now when you're 17, 18 years old, it's like, okay, turf. Of course, I'm playing turf at away games, but now I'm playing turf all season long, and
now
that's going to be a little bit
at our
interesting.
place. Come try grass, buddy. Yeah. Come try it at our place. I mean, that to me is an advantage that they have.
Yeah,
it's we can't wait to get you at our place.
I thought so too.
Anybody can play on this turf here, but come try it at our place.
Yeah.
And the Inferno, like you said, it's a great place to play regardless.
No doubt.
And hopefully that remains. But boy, that'll be a big difference. One of the things I like about the grass is you still get dirty uniforms. Mm-hmm. They've kind of done away with the laundry lady at most of these schools now with the artificial turf and that. But okay, enough about crying about the past, Mike. Number one, the right here, the right now, and for the foreseeable future, it's the Crown Point Bulldogs and nobody else.
Not much more to be said. The cream of the crop over here in Northwest Indiana, especially when it comes to football. a team that is loaded from top to bottom, especially on the sidelines as well. Coaches that obviously get these guys right for a game that of this caliber, playing a highly ranked team in Class 5A, going to a spot where Merrillville, again, hasn't lost. And since they last played Crown Point in 2022 at Merrillville High School, it's truly impressive what they're doing week in and week out, and we only expect bigger and better things. Crown Point, that offense or defense as well, the complementary football, 42-plus points in the first 3 weeks of every single game so far. Again, a 27-0 second quarter led them to that big win against Merrillville, and they just got stars top to bottom. I mean, Trevor Gibbs, Noah Ehrlich, Larry Ellison, Jacob Soley, Nolan Cicero. I could keep going on and on. Lucas Szymborski, a big transfer who had a big catch, big touchdown catch, one of our electrifying plays of the week. I mean, I'm surely missing so many names, but that's just how fantastic this roster is, and got to find a team who could take them down. And it may have to be coming down, maybe a little bit more down south so far, because that's all we've seen so far from this Crown Point team, especially up here.
You know, Mike, we talk a lot about, we're doing that series on beating the brickies, and we talk about the standard bearer for region football, and all of that stuff. Well, that all remains true, but what Crown Point is doing is they're taking it to a whole new level here. They're running this like a Division I football operation, it seems. I don't recall any program in the region, and that includes the glory days of Hobart, when things were run at such a high level. I mean, what they have over there, the facilities that they're building, all the things that they're incorporating into their training and all these different things that they're doing, they are leading the way. The other schools, if they want to catch them, just like with Hobart, as we're finding out, what do we hear? The weightlifting and all of this stuff, they were in better condition. We had to catch up to them. And teams, they set that bar. Crown Point is setting that new bar. And if you want to, we could be doing a series on beating the Bulldogs in 25 years. That's kind of where they're at right now.
It definitely has a ring to it, that title, to say the least. But this is a team that's leading by example here in Northwest Indiana. Yeah, they're not going to slow down, I bet. Again, they're going to lose some players over time, as teams typically do, but they are not going to slow down for anybody. It's only going to be who's going to be up there to try and catch up to them, because they're the blueprint right now. They're showing it to us week in and week out. And again, there's not much more you could say. It's rinse and repeat. And again, what team is going to be that faithful team? Hey, we may talk about in 25 years that team that's going to snap some of these streaks that I wrote down for this Crown Point team. But already they're making history so far, and they're hoping to keep that train going so far for Crown Point.
I'll be 85 in 25 years, so you're writing the story. I want you to know that.
You'll still have some juice left in you, maybe. We'll see.
I won't have a memory left.
Never
by
say
then.
never.
Yeah,
There you go.
All right, well, that is the Enigberg Top 10 for week number 4, courtesy of Enigberg Exteriors. Find them on the web at eberg.com. They do siding, windows, roofing, all kinds of stuff, whatever you need. They can help you out. Please do us a favor. If you're a fan of our programming and you're looking to do some home improvement work, give them a call and mention to them that you found out about them or heard of them on the Region Sports Network. So, all right, Mike, we're going to take a timeout, come back. We got one more segment. We're going to take a look at a handful of games this week. So stick around. Mike and I will be back after this on the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.
Save for a healthy tomorrow with an HSA checking account from Tech Credit Union. It's a tax-advantaged way to save and pay for healthcare expenses. You'll enjoy no setup fee, no annual fee, and easy access to funds. Plus, you'll earn a better-than-competitive dividend rate, currently at 2.27% APY. Visit techcu.org, contact any branch, or call 800-276-8324 to learn more. Tech Credit Union is federally insured by the NCUA. Rates may change without notice.
Have you checked out Send Bank's student checking account? This no-fee checking account is perfect for students and teens ages 14 to 24 and comes with all the features you need to succeed, such as a debit card, digital banking, and automatic deposit. Send Bank can help you start establishing good spending today for your better tomorrow. For more information, visit sentier.com/student-checking or visit your local branch. If you are under the age of 18, your parent or guardian must also sign on the Sentier student checking account. At the age of 25, your account will automatically convert to the Sentier checking account. You must deposit $25 to open this account. This account is for overdraft advantage. Member FDIC.
Four Seasons Mechanical proudly serves Northwest Indiana, providing quality, reasonably priced, reliable service. With a quality and comfort guarantee, the professionals at Four Seasons Mechanical offer a wide range of services in heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. Whether it's residential or commercial, Four Seasons Mechanical is there 24/7. To find out more, the website is fourseasonsmechanical.com or give them a call at 219-756-7020. Four Seasons Mechanical, your indoor air quality specialists.
Welcome back one more time to the Centier Bank Studios with Mike Dewan, Zach Miller, Zach Zanelli. I am Chris Ramirez. Thank you for joining us here. Region Football Weekly for the fourth week of the season. So it flies by, Mike, and there's nothing we can do about it except try to enjoy it as much as we can. And we got a bunch of games on the docket this week to enjoy. If you're going out, you got a number of great choices. If you're staying in, you still got a number of great choices. But let's get to it, Mike.
Sure thing.
This week's top games, we'll start in the GSSC. One of our bubble teams, River Forest. They're taking on number 7 West Side on the west side of Gary.
Gonna be a good one over there at West Side. Again, River Forest, a team looking for a bounce back schedule. But if you like quarterbacks who could run the football, they arguably have 2 of the top rushing quarterbacks maybe in the area. Aiden Silver of River Forest, who was a little bit contained last week from that Wheeler Bearcat front, and Giuseppe Moore, who I mentioned, who's I think in the top 5 for rushing yards. He's the quarterback for West Side. A lot of dynamic playmakers. Maybe not a lot of passing over there, but a lot of quarterback draws. Whatever they could do to get their athletes the ball. Expect a lot of Aiden Silver and Giuseppe Moore in that game. River Forest, as I mentioned, coming off that loss against Wheeler. West Side, a big win against Boone Grove. West Side won this game 38-20 last year, and this was kind of the start of a 3-game skid for that River Forest squad. Again, with conference rolling around, there's a lot of momentum at stake. This is a long season. A game like this, a big game. You walk away with the win here, that could kind of set you up for the future. Obviously, of course, you want to win the conference or your respective division, I should say, in this very conference. But nonetheless, this will set you up for the future. A lot of morale booster, and again, a big game here at West Side. Going to be a good one.
Let's take a look inside the Duneland. A couple of top 10 teams. The number 3 Merrillville Pirates traveling out to the Warpath to take on the number 10 Portage Indians. Last year they played this one at the Purple Palace. I didn't realize this, but 17-7. Portage,
game.
a winless team last year, going up against maybe number 1 ranked Merrillville at the time, and they held them. It was a 10-point game on the road. Not too bad.
So this could be a trap game for number 3 Merrillville. I mentioned that Portage could have. It's tough to really kind of predict how this game may come about. Merrillville obviously looking to bounce back from that tough loss to Crown Point. And Portage, the same thing, a nail-biter last week that could have very well propelled them to 3-0. But playing a game at Portage, obviously if Portage is able to hold their own with that team last year against Merrillville at the Purple Palace, then to go back to Portage High School and play Merrillville, I mean, this game could be a real close one, to say the least. Again, it's tough to predict here. But Portage, again, they're a quality team. This is a different team from last year's squad, and a team that hung in there with a Merrillville squad that went to the semi-state game and, was as competitive as they come here in the region. This game could be shaping up to be a solid one there. Again, a lot at stake for the Duneland. Although we mentioned the cream of the crop maybe, which is Crown Point, we're still looking for those teams to be up in the mix. I mean, you're playing for a lot here. You're playing for all conference selections. You're playing for, every win in the conference is big nonetheless, and they're looking to do whatever they can. Of course, none of that stuff maybe matters. You want to walk away with the win. But again, confidence booster leading up for the rest of the season, because this is a tough stretch, specifically for this Portage Indian team. I want to say they got Crown Point, I think, next week as well. It doesn't get easier for them here in Merrillville. They're just looking to bounce back, but we're going to keep our eye on that one. Portage, again, looking to kind of limit the giveaways for a Merrillville defense that is very, very stout. All
right, we'll leave the Portage parking lot. We're going to head west down Route 6. We're going to end up at the Brickyard where the KV Cougars are in to play the Brickies.
A game on the Region Sports Network. Going to be a fun one there from the Brickyard. 2 NCC teams looking to kind of, again, do some damage in that conference. KV looking for a bounce-back game, a tough loss to Andrean, and Hobart, they're 1-0 in the conference. That's all that matters, and they're hoping to make it 2-0. Again, the Brickyard, never an easy place to play. Again, they had their home opener against Merrillville, which was a tough one, but this kind of feels like a true home opener, a bigger game, I'd like to say, between the two, at least with terms of implications. You get Willie Shearer coming back, his home opener of the season. Again, a talented running back as well as defensive back who made his season debut last week. I want to say on the first set of downs, he had about a 78-yard touchdown reception to open the things up for that Hobart offense, who was desperately needing a playmaker like him back in the backfield. Marco Castro, speaking of running backs as well, as talented as they come here in the region, the leading rusher on that Peak Performers presented by Powering Indiana on that leaderboard. Again, he's first in the area. 2 tough running backs. Going to be a lot of running the football, but Hobart, again, interested to see how that offense kind of evolves over time. Again, a big week last week against Munster. Cavey looking to bounce back. We're excited for that one to have that on the Region Sports Network.
Yeah, Mike, Better Beef of Indiana is asking me right now,
okay,
what is the meat of the matter? What will be the difference in the game tomorrow?
Who just has the better rushing attack? You have two solid rushers in the backfield. Again, I say the matchup here, Willie Shearer versus Marco Castro in the backfields. Again, who's going to get their athletes out in space, specifically those two guys, Marco Castro, although, of course, both these guys can catch passes. Marco Castro's more the guy that he's a bruiser, but he could also bust out a big run. He's going to be the guy to look out for against the Hobart defense that's still trying to kind of find their identity. Obviously, a great showing for them last week, but the Hobart, their struggle was kind of preventing teams from scoring. KV is an offense that scored a couple points, a decent amount of points in those first 2 weeks. They're an offense looking to get back on track after kind of a letdown against Andrean. Now, Willie Shearer, again, he adds another layer of that offense, gets them to a new spot, a younger team that is, again, hoping to get back on track. And Willie Shearer having that senior leadership who could do just about everything for the Brickies. Whoever kind of wins that matchup in the backfield, I think that'll kind of paint the picture of who's going to win the game. So whatever offensive line, again, wins the battle in the trenches and kind of opens up holes for these two playmakers, whoever does it more, that's going to be the deciding factor, I'd say.
The deciding factor, also known as the meat of the matter, the difference in the ball game here. What will it come down to? The meat of the matter brought to you by Better Beef of Indiana. Look them up on the web. I'm a customer of theirs. If you like to eat red meat, check out Better Beef of Indiana. I highly recommend them. Mike, staying in the Duneland Conference, moving into the Duneland Conference here, the Lake Central Indians are number 9 team in the poll. I can't remember the last time LC and CP were both ranked when playing each other, but they are this year. It's 1 versus 9 at the Dog Pound tomorrow.
Yeah, it's, again, a lot to look forward to for this game. Lake Central, a team that is, again, first-year head coach. We've seen a lot of fight from them so far in these first 3 weeks, but, again, you're playing a buzzsaw in Crown Point where they just rinse and repeat every single week. This is, again, Crown Point. They've won 21 straight regular season games, longest now in the area, 17 straight Duneland wins and 14 straight road victories. It's a team that they're just fantastic. They're playing great football. In Lake Central, they're looking to do whatever they can to kind of put a halt to their party. And we know Pete Koulianos, again, he's going to always have his guys play the right way, play good games of football. But for Lake Central, again, you got to play a good 4 quarters. As I said with that Merrillville game, you got to play errorless football just about, because if you do commit an error, you do commit a penalty, a turnover, Crown Point's going to make you pay, and that's what makes them so great.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is, how now, and we see Crown Point separating themselves from everybody else. How do the coaches keep their players, their teams in a situation, in a practice week? You got Crown Point, how do you make them believe that they can not only stay in the game, but that they can beat them?
Yeah, it's not an easy task for a coach. It's kind of what, of course, you would kind of want to be blunt and maybe tell the truth, but then again, you got to keep these guys fired up for Friday, get them ready to go, and it's one of the challenges as a coach. But again, for Lake Central, you got to play a good game of football. You have to stick to the basics. You have to just make sure you do everything correctly. Do the same rep multiple times until it's perfected. Whether that's a couple plays, that you could run correctly, and you could make sure to not make an error. Everybody does their job. You can stick to that, and you have to play a perfect brand of football against Crown Point. I keep saying it, but it's true. It's true. They're going to make you pay if you make a mistake. And for Lake Central, you have to, whether that's, again, maybe expanding the playbook or shrinking it, but you have to stick to the basics. And it's a long, probably week of practice of, it's going to be tough. You got to get ready for these guys coming up on Friday, but you have to know your game. You have to study your playbook and get ready to go because this team's going to make you pay if you don't.
Yeah, last couple times these teams played, it was a blowout in favor
Yeah.
of Crown Point. So let me ask you this, Mike. You were a high school player. You were a team captain over at Munster. You did have the unfortunate timing of playing when maybe the program wasn't at its best. You took your lumps on a few times as a team captain, a middle linebacker.
Yeah.
You're in a situation maybe where the other team's getting the best of you. How do you keep your teammates from sort of rolling over and dying? How do you keep everybody fighting and trying to keep the score respectable and playing for pride? What's the key to doing something like that?
It's not easy. It's not an easy task to be in, especially as a player, because you know you're going to probably face the brunt of it as the team captain or whatever, a higher profile within your team. But you have to lead by example, especially for the guys, because you're kind of on the front line at that rate. Again, you're the team captain. You're the guy walking out there at the coin toss. You're the guy the ref speaks to whenever they need a call. They're going to let you know about it, and you have to lead by example for the rest of the guys. You're going to have to be. You're the driving force for what this team does on Friday nights, and you cannot be a bad apple because it'll spoil the whole bunch. So you have to be optimistic. You got to get ready to go. Again, you have to strive to kind of promote that culture that Pete Koulianos especially, and all these coaches as well. No matter what instance this is, whatever they're trying to portray on their kids, and what the bigger picture is, you have to do that as well in player form. Because again, coaches, of course, you want to listen to them, and of course you usually do. But it's much easier to kind of hear from the voice of someone who's your age or a couple years above.
And you're ultimately playing for the guy next to you, right? The
Sure,
guys in the huddle, your buddies, the guy you hang out with.
The guys on the sideline, they only do so much. Again, the code, they call the shots, of course. They get you on the field. They do a lot for you, but you're playing for the guys next to you as well, and they could maybe take you to another level in terms of motivation. And again, that's kind of what separates these teams. Again, we've got a lot of leadership. That's why the teams that are at the top of these lists, typically they got some solid leaders, and that's kind of also, of course, coaches play a big part into that, play a big factor into that. But it's again, the players on the field that they do the most damage.
Well, hopefully it won't be a blowout. I don't want it to be. I hope
No.
I mean, we're doing the game, and I hope Lake Central
Correct.
and Crown Point play when it goes down to the wire, no matter who wins. So, but one more game to look at. Also, a ranked team here, number 4 Valpo. Also a Duneland game, I should say. Number 4 Valpo traveling out to beautiful Ames Field to take on the Michigan City Wolves.
That's not an easy place to play at all. Going to Michigan City, Valparaiso. Again, they've showed us some fight these last few weeks. An offense that's playing fantastic. Thomas Berta is their big-time running back. He's won our superhero of the game. The last 2 Valparaiso games we have done, and he's looking to make it a third. They could run the football as they obviously seem to do, but Michigan City's coming off their best defensive performance of the year, I'd say, last week, shutting down a big-time rushing attack in the Chesterton Trojans, who have 2 guys well over 300 yards rushing so far on the season. City's playing with a chip on their shoulder. Again, they're 1-0 in the conference, which is really all that matters at this rate. Yeah, Valparaiso has the one up on them in the overall record, but City, they're looking to get a big-time win here. Ames Field, we know, is always a tough place to play. Valparaiso has gotten the best of them over the course of this past season. They beat them twice, including one of them, I believe that was in the sectional championship at Valparaiso, but that's a different story when you're playing at home versus on the road at Ames Field. We're excited for that one. Again, Michigan City, a defense that's solid, an offense that is always looking to grow, and it's kind of the opposite over there for Valparaiso.
Yeah, I love going to Ames Field. Great place to watch a game.
Tough place to play.
Got 2 things going for it that a lot of fields don't anymore. One of them is it still runs east to west. Most of them are north to south. And my favorite aspect of a high school football field, no track around it, like Merrillville.
I like it,
so the action is nice and close. The fans aren't separated by 40 yards from the sidelines like you see at a lot of schools. So it makes for a great environment to play and to watch a game in.
It's tough for a kid because, again, if you play at a school that has a track, you're playing half your games of the regular season at home. And, again, you mentioned there's not many schools around the area without a track I could think of. Again, you said Merrillville. East Chicago is one that sticks out to me that I like a lot personally, playing there once. But that's a tough place to play. It's tough to adjust to because you're so close to the fans too. I mean, you can almost touch them if you go over to the fence, and it's a beautiful facility, but it's tough when you're on the away sideline. All
right, well, that's going to wrap it up, Mike. Great job again here. Week 4 is in the books as far as we're concerned on the Thursday night Region Football Weekly show, and now it's game night in the region. That's all ahead of us for tomorrow night.
Just like that. Again, it's rinse and repeat here. Week 4 already, like you mentioned. It's always good to kind of sit back and stop and smell the roses because it flies by super quickly, and it's the best time of the year, as we say here at the Region Sports Network. And it's been a fun ride so far, and we're hoping to add another big chapter to this season so far tomorrow.
Absolutely. We got Zach Zanelli and Zach Miller in the house. He's Mike Dewan. I'm Chris Ramirez. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We really appreciate it. This has been a production of the Region Sports Network, the only game in town.
earn hands in the business. The Bricklayer Workers for Indiana Kentucky Apprenticeship. That's right, this is a paid apprenticeship.
I'm getting an education while learning a trade and getting paid for it.
The thing that surprised me the most about this apprenticeship program is the respect I've received after the proper
Soon, so apply now. There are training centers throughout Indiana and Kentucky. We are the Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers for Indiana, Kentucky. In the business.
Flip the switch, a light turns on. Press the button, machines and instruments come to life. Touch the screen, communicate with the world. Simple tasks, guaranteed results, every second of every day. That's the power of power. And that's the power brought to you by the NECA contractors and electrical workers of Local 531.
We love home internet from T-Mobile. Oh, now Mesh boosts Wi-Fi all over your home. Taking a class in your attic, that dead spot is gone. Stream ballet in your man cave, learn to paint on your lawn.
It's glorious.
And now on the road, you can take T-Mobile Wi-Fi with you. Hey, stay connected and watch what you'll do.
Blythe's Team Sports in Valparaiso is a leader in athletics apparel and equipment sales. With in-house production including screen printing, trophies, embroidery, and more, Blythe's can help you to create the perfect look. For more information, visit them online at teamblythes.com. Blythe's Team Sports in Valparaiso, where the athletes shop.
Better Beef of Indiana. Hormone-free, locally raised, and locally processed beef. Better Beef of Indiana is located in Valpo at 2600 Beach Street, where you could buy individual cuts of beef completely raised in Hebron. From single pounds of ground beef to filet mignon, Better Beef of Indiana has it all. Visit their website at betterbeefindiana.com. Follow them on Facebook or call the owner, Kevin, directly at 219-508-5797. Better Beef of Indiana, where quality meets value.